The classroom fell silent as 12-year-old Maya Chen stood at the front, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor of Westbridge Academy's most prestigious mathematics class. Her scholarship uniform, a size too large, with frayed cuffs and a patch on the elbow, hung loosely on her small frame, a stark contrast to the designer clothes worn by her classmates. "Well?" Professor Richard Sterling's voice dripped with condescension as he tapped his expensive fountain pen against the mahogany desk. "We're waiting, scholarship student. Or perhaps this problem is beyond your capabilities." The equation on the smart board behind Maya was a monster complex differential equation that even advanced university students would struggle with. Professor Sterling had written it specifically for her, a cruel test designed to expose what he called the fraud of the scholarship program. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she clutched the marker. Behind her, she could hear the whisper, some pitying, most mocking, "She doesn't belong here." Someone muttered, "Why did they even let her in?" Another voice sneered, "This is embarrassing." A third student laughed quietly. Professor Sterling crossed his arms, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "I think we have our answer, class. This is what happens when we lower our standards." Perhaps Miss Chen would be more comfortable in a less demanding environment. The injustice of the moment hung in the air like smoke. Maya had scored the highest on the entrance exam in the Academy's 50-year history, but none of that mattered now. She was the poor kid, the outsider, the one who didn't belong. "Professor Sterling," Maya began, her voice barely above a whisper, "could I have just a moment to—" "A moment?" Sterling interrupted, his voice rising theatrically for the class's benefit. "You've had 3 minutes to even begin this problem, and you haven't written a single number. In this academy, we value efficiency and excellence, not excuses." The class erupted in laughter. Brandon Whitmore, son of a tech billionaire, leaned back in his chair with exaggerated amusement. "Maybe she's waiting for inspiration to strike," he said loudly, triggering another wave of giggles. "Or maybe she's trying to remember which end of the marker writes," added Victoria Chen Rothschild, heiress to a banking fortune, flipping her perfectly styled hair. Professor Sterling made no attempt to quiet them. Instead, he walked to the front of the classroom, standing uncomfortably close to Maya. "You see, class, this is precisely why legacy and pedigree matter in education. Mathematics isn't just about solving problems, it's about breeding, about growing up in an environment of intellectual excellence. Some people simply lack the genetic and environmental advantages necessary for true brilliance." Maya felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. She thought of her mother, working double shifts at the hospital. She thought of her father, who had died 2 years ago, but who had spent every evening teaching her advanced mathematics at their tiny kitchen table. "Perhaps," Sterling continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "we should document this moment. After all, the scholarship board will want to know why we're recommending termination of your placement here." He pulled out his phone, angling it toward Maya and the blank board behind her. "Now, on the count of 3, I want you to tell the camera why you're not capable of solving this problem. 1, 2. But something in Maya's eyes changed. The fear, the humiliation had transformed into something else, something harder, something determined. "I'm ready now," she said quietly. Sterling paused, his phone still raised. "What?" "I said I'm ready to solve the problem now." Maya turned to face the board, her hands steady as she uncapped the marker. "This should be entertaining." Brandon whispered to Victoria, loud enough for everyone to hear. What happened next would be talked about at Westbridge Academy for years to come. Maya's marker touched the board, and she began to write. But she wasn't writing numbers or standard mathematical notation. She was writing in a way that made Professor Sterling's confident smirk begin to falter. First, she rewrote the equation in 3 different forms: Cartesian, polar, and parametric, each one revealing a different aspect of the problem's structure. Her handwriting was small but precise, each symbol perfectly formed. "Wait," Sterling said, stepping closer. "That's not the standard approach." But Maya wasn't listening. Her marker flew across the board with increasing speed and confidence. She applied a transformation that Sterling himself had never seen before, one that simplified the problem in a way that seemed almost magical. "She's using the Chen-Kobayashi transformation," whispered a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. It was David Park, the top student in the senior class, a mathematics prodigy who had already published 2 papers in academic journals. He was staring at the board with his mouth slightly open. "The what?" Sterling demanded. "The Chen-Kobayashi transformation," David repeated, standing up to get a closer look. It's an advanced technique for solving nonlinear differential equations. It was developed by, oh my God, Maya continued writing, now incorporating elements of topology and abstract algebra that were usually taught only at the graduate level. She broke the original equation into 3 coupled systems, solved each one using a different method, then elegantly recombined them using a recursive function that made the solution almost trivial. Professor Sterling's face had gone pale. He recognized what he was seeing, but he couldn't believe it. Victoria Chen Rothschild leaned forward in her seat. Wait, didn't my father mention something about a mathematician named Chen? Someone who revolutionized. She trailed off, her eyes widening. Maya stepped back from the board. Written across it in perfect mathematical notation was not just the solution, the Sterling's impossible problem, but a complete proof showing 3 alternative methods of reaching the same answer, along with a brief explanation of when each method would be most efficient. At the bottom, she had added one final line. This problem is a variant of Theorem 7. 3 from Advanced Applications in Nonlinear Systems by Dr. James Chen. Published 2018. The classroom was completely silent now. James Chen? Sterling whispered, his face now ashen. You mean, the James Chen? The Fields Medal nominee? Maya turned to face him, her expression calm, but with steel in her eyes. Yes, Professor Sterling. Dr. James Chen. My father. The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. What no one in the classroom knew, what even Maya didn't know, was that they weren't alone. In a small observation room adjacent to the classroom, 3 people sat in stunned silence, watching through a one-way mirror that had been installed years ago for teacher evaluations. The first was Margaret Price, Westbridge Academy's headmistress, her face a mask of barely controlled fury as she watched one of her professors humiliate a student. The second was Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the scholarship committee, frantically taking notes on her tablet. The third was a man in an impeccably tailored suit, his silver hair neatly combed, his expression unreadable. His name was Robert Chen Masuda, and he was one of the most powerful CEOs in the technology sector. He was also, though few people knew it, Maya's uncle, her father's younger half-brother. That's enough, Robert said quietly, standing up. I've seen enough. Margaret Price turned to him, her face apologetic. Mr. Chen Masuda, I assure you, Professor Sterling's behavior is completely unacceptable and does not represent. Do you know why I donated $50 million to this academy 3 years ago? Robert interrupted, his voice soft but commanding. It wasn't for the science wing or the new library, though those are fine additions. He walked to the one-way mirror, watching as Maya stood before her classmates, her revelation still hanging in the air. My brother James was one of the greatest mathematical minds of his generation. He died 2 years ago in a car accident, along with his wife. They left behind a 12-year-old daughter who inherited every ounce of his genius. Robert's hand touched the glass gently. I've been watching over Maya from a distance, respecting her mother's wish to let her daughter make her own way, without the weight of our family name. But I wanted to ensure she had opportunities. The scholarship, Dr. Kim said quietly, was designed specifically to bring exceptional students from underprivileged backgrounds to Westbridge. Yes, Maya earned her place here fairly. She didn't know about my connection to the academy, and I made sure my involvement was completely anonymous. Robert's jaw tightened. I wanted to see how this academy would treat a brilliant child when they thought she was nobody important. Mr. Chen Masuda, Margaret began, but he held up a hand. I think it's time we join the class, don't you? Back in the classroom, the chaos was building. James Chen's daughter, Brandon Whitmore, had gone pale. My father has 3 of his papers framed in his office. He calls him a genius. Victoria was rapidly typing on her phone. Her earlier smugness completely evaporated. Oh God, James Chen's work is fundamental to my family's algorithmic trading systems. If she tells her family, my family? Maya said, her voice cutting through the noise. For the first time, there was a hint of fire in her tone. My family is my mother, who worked 60 hours a week to give me a chance at a good education. My family was my father, who taught me mathematics every night until he died, who showed me that numbers and equations could be beautiful, who believed that knowledge should be shared, not hoarded by the privileged. She turned to Professor Sterling, who seemed to have shrunk into himself. My father used to say that true intelligence isn't shown by making others feel small. It's shown by lifting others up, by sharing knowledge. By creating opportunities for everyone to discover their potential, Maya's voice was steady now. Strong, you asked me to solve an impossible problem, to humiliate me. But the truly impossible problem is how someone like you became a teacher. The classroom door opened. Every head turned as Robert Chen Matsuda walked in, followed by Headmistress Price and Dr. Kim. The students recognized him immediately. His face had been on the cover of Forbes magazine just last month, and his company's logo was on half the devices in the room. Uncle Robert, Maya whispered, her composure finally cracking. Robert walked directly to her, ignoring everyone else in the room. Hello, Maya. I'm sorry I stayed away so long. He pulled her into a gentle hug, and for the first time since the ordeal began, Maya let herself cry. Professor Sterling looked like he might faint. The next hour was a blur. Professor Sterling was escorted from the classroom immediately, pending a full investigation and likely termination. Headmistress Price personally apologized to Maya, though Robert made it clear that apologies wouldn't be enough. The academy's entire culture needed to change, but the real transformation happened in the classroom itself. David Park approached Maya first, after she had composed herself. That transformation you used, the Chen Kobayashi transformation. I've been trying to understand it for months. Your father's paper on it is brilliant, but there's a section I can't quite grasp. Would you maybe be willing to explain it sometime? Maya wiped her eyes and nodded. My dad always said that mathematics is better when shared. One by one, other students approached. Not all of them, some, like Brandon and Victoria, kept their distance, too embarrassed by their earlier behavior. But others came forward with genuine curiosity, genuine respect. A girl named Sarah, who had been silent during Maya's humiliation, spoke up shyly. I'm on scholarship too. I've been too afraid to speak up in class because I thought everyone would judge me. But watching you today, thank you. Robert Chen Matsuda stood at the back of the room, observing everything. When the room had mostly cleared, he approached his niece. You didn't tell anyone who your father was, he said. Why? Maya looked down at her worn shoes. Because I wanted to be judged on my own merit, not on his legacy. I wanted to prove that I belonged here because of my abilities, not my name, and you did, Robert said softly. But Maya, you need to understand something. Your father's legacy isn't just his mathematical achievements. It's his belief that everyone deserves a chance to learn, to grow, to discover their potential. By hiding who you are, you're not protecting yourself, you're denying others the inspiration of your story. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video that had already gone viral on social media. Someone had recorded Maya solving the equation, and it had been shared thousands of times in the last hour alone. The comments were overwhelming. This girl is incredible. Future Fields Medal winner. I'm a mathematics professor at MIT, and that solution was graduate level work. Who is she? This is what brilliance looks like. Not privilege, not connections, pure talent and hard work. Her father would be so proud, one comment read, and Maya felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. Robert knelt down to her level. Your father used to say something else, something I think you need to hear right now. He said, mathematics doesn't care about your background, your wealth, or your status. It only cares about truth. You proved that today. Maya, you showed everyone in this room that brilliance isn't about where you come from, it's about where you're going. 3 months later, Westbridge Academy looked very different. Professor Sterling was gone, replaced by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a passionate educator who had spent years teaching in underprivileged schools. She implemented a new policy. Every advanced class would have a peer tutoring program where struggling students could learn from their classmates without judgment. The scholarship program had been expanded dramatically, funded by an anonymous donation of another $50 million. Robert Chen Matsuda had made it clear that Maya's story couldn't be an isolated case. The academy needed to open its doors wider, to find and nurture brilliant minds regardless of their circumstances. Maya herself had become something of a legend at the school. She started a free tutoring program for younger students, teaching advanced mathematics concepts in the way her father had taught her, with patience, kindness, and the belief that everyone could understand if given the right approach. David Park became her first real friend at the academy, and together they published a paper simplifying several of her father's more complex theorems, making them accessible to high school students. The paper was accepted by the Junior Mathematics Journal and attracted attention from universities around the world, but perhaps the most significant, Change came from an unexpected source. Victoria. Chen Rothschild approached Maya one day in the library, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked like genuine humility. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said quietly, sitting down across from Maya. "Not just for that day in class, but for everything. For thinking that wealth and status meant I was better than you. For laughing when you were being humiliated." Maya looked up from her calculus textbook, surprised. "My family built our fortune on your father's mathematical models," Victoria continued, "and I didn't even know his name until that day. I've been reading his papers for the past few months. He was extraordinary. And so are you." She slid a piece of paper across the table. On it was a complex equation, one she'd been working on for weeks. "I'm stuck," Victoria admitted, "and I was hoping maybe you could help me." Maya looked at the equation, then at Victoria's face, seeing genuine hope there, genuine humility. She thought about her father, about his belief in second chances, about the power of knowledge to break down barriers. "Sure," Maya said, sliding the paper back to the center of the table. "But we work on it together. That's how learning works best." As the two girls bent over the equation together, something shifted in the Westbridge Academy library. A wall came down, a bridge was built, and in that moment, Maya understood something profound about her father's legacy. It wasn't just about the theorems, or the papers, or the mathematical breakthroughs. It was about the moment when knowledge brought people together instead of dividing them, when curiosity overcame pride, when learning became a shared journey instead of a competition. 6 months after the incident in Professor Sterling's class, Maya stood on a stage at Westbridge Academy's annual academic awards ceremony. She had won the Founders Medal for Mathematics, the highest honor the Academy could bestow. But she wasn't thinking about the award. She was thinking about her father, wishing he could see this moment. She was thinking about her mother in the audience, crying proud tears. She was thinking about Uncle Robert, who had stepped into her life when she needed family most. She was thinking about all the students she tutored, all the walls she'd helped break down. In her acceptance speech, she didn't talk about her achievements or her father's legacy. Instead, she told a story. "When I was 8 years old," she began, "my father gave me an impossible equation to solve. I worked on it for hours, filling page after page with attempts, getting more and more frustrated. Finally, I gave up. I told him it was impossible." The auditorium was silent, everyone listening. He smiled and told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Maya, in mathematics and in life, there's no such thing as an impossible problem. There are only problems we haven't solved yet, and problems we haven't approached from the right angle." Then he showed me a way of looking at the equation I'd never considered, and suddenly the solution was clear. Maya looked out at the audience, at the sea of faces, some friendly, some still uncertain, all listening. That day in Professor Sterling's class, when he wrote what he called an impossible equation on the board, I was scared. I was humiliated. But then I remembered my father's words. I changed my angle. I looked at the problem differently, and I found my solution. She paused, letting the words sink in. But here's what I really learned that day. The biggest impossible problems aren't on whiteboards. They're the walls we build between each other, the assumptions we make about who belongs and who doesn't, the belief that brilliance only comes from certain backgrounds, certain families, certain advantages. Those are the truly impossible problems, or at least, they seem impossible until we change our angle, until we choose curiosity over judgment, until we choose collaboration over competition, until we choose to see the potential in every person, regardless of where they come from. Maya held up her medal, letting it catch the light. "This award has my name on it, but it represents something bigger than me. It represents every student who's been told they don't belong, every brilliant mind that almost gave up because someone said they weren't good enough, every impossible problem that was solved because someone refused to accept that it couldn't be done." She looked directly at the section where the scholarship students sat, a section that was much larger now than it had been 6 months ago. "My father taught me that mathematics is the language of truth, and the truth is this: brilliance is everywhere. Potential is everywhere. Genius doesn't care about your zip code, or your bank account, or your last name. It only cares about curiosity, dedication, and the courage to keep solving problems even when everyone tells you they're impossible." The applause started slowly, then built to a crescendo. But Maya noticed something that meant more than any applause. She saw students from different backgrounds sitting together, talking together, learning from each other. She saw the walls continuing to come down. That night, alone in her room with her mother and Uncle Robert, Maya pulled out an old notebook, one of the last ones her father had given her before he died. Inside, in his distinctive handwriting, was a note she'd never noticed before. To my brilliant daughter Maya, never let anyone make you small. Never let anyone tell you that your dreams are impossible. Remember that every equation, no matter how complex, can be solved if you approach it with curiosity, persistence, and love. You have all three in abundance. I believe in you, always. Dad. Maya traced the words with her finger, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of understanding, of purpose, of determination. She had solved Professor Sterling's impossible equation, but more importantly, she had begun solving a much more important impossible problem, changing a system that judged people by their circumstances rather than their character, their potential, their dreams. And as she sat there, surrounded by the people who loved her, Maya understood the final lesson her father had tried to teach her, that the most beautiful solutions aren't the ones we solve alone, but the ones we solve together, lifting each other up, sharing knowledge, creating a world where every brilliant mind gets the chance to shine. The impossible equation had been solved, but the real work, the work of building bridges, breaking down walls, and creating opportunities for everyone, was just beginning. And Maya Chen, daughter of a mathematical genius, scholarship student at Westbridge Academy, was ready for the challenge, because she had learned the most important truth of all. In mathematics and in life, there are no impossible problems. There are only problems we haven't solved yet and solutions we haven't discovered together.